Alright, so here's the first part of the video. I'm going to try to merge all these together, but here's what you need to know. The most important part of this cart is actually the transmission. The rear end is more readily available because this is the same rear end for electric or gas. I don't know what year this came out of, but this is going to be anywhere from 1987 to 1996 and some of 1997. That's when they changed the production. But the most important thing if you're buying a cart is you have to make sure that this transmission shifts smoothly from forward to reverse. Okay? They're getting harder and harder to get these things. I won't buy a rear end on a cart that's already been converted. If it's pedal start, I know it's good. There's synchronization rings inside this transmission, and if it's not set up correctly when you put the engine in it, it starts burning those rings up. Okay, so nothing what we're doing with the gear change has anything to do with the transmission. I am going to remove it, but I'm not going to open it up. This is a working transmission. It's flawless. It has no problems, no leaks. We're going to leave that alone. Then I also want to show you, now that this is out of the cart, we're going to start by removing the gear oil. I've seen many opinions of what fluid goes in there, but it is gear oil. So 8590, I don't know exactly what goes in there, but you should put gear oil in there. Same thing with the transmission. The transmission, that's not transmission fluid or motor oil inside of there. This is an OEM factory one, never been opened up, and I'm going to open up the drain for it just to show you that is gear oil in there. So I would say 80 weight, 80, 90, whatever you want to put in there, just make sure it's gear oil. Go a little bit heavier if you want to. So anyways, with the rear end out, we're going to remove the bolt down here and drain it. And I wanted to show another thing, which is axle removal. How to get these axles out. Yes, we are going to be taking them off of the transmission, okay? But there's a couple things going on in here, and you may need to remove one of these axles. So with that being said, the only set of snap ring pliers that works, guys, I promise you I got $400 worth of snap ring pliers. These are the only ones that work. It's very tight in there. You get these from Harbor Freight. It's the Icon and get the whole kit. Okay, I believe there was 4 of them inside here. Forgot what they cost. But because of the way that these are designed and how short that is, these are the only set that works. Okay, give me a second and I'll show you what we do to get that axle out. Okay, axle removal, it is mission impossible for me to get the phone inside here. But inside here is a lock ring, okay? And I'm going to situate myself to get these snap ring pliers on that lock ring and remove it. Hold on, I lied. Kevin found a better way. So, through that hole, you can see the end of the snap ring. So what I'm going to be doing, there's no way I'm doing this while I hold the cell phone, but I'm going to get these inside that snap ring. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. So he got it. That's it. That's the little ring you're trying to get off there, guys. Okay, so we pulled the ring out. And gave us a little fight. But now you can see what we were doing with the snap ring pliers. Okay. There's a bearing here, guys, and unless there's a problem with it, leave it alone. If you do have to replace it with a Japanese bearing, not a China bearing. Do not replace this with a China bearing. Okay, one of the failure points, that snap ring that we just pulled out of right here, okay, that snap ring will pull out of this housing. Especially if you got people on the back of the cart, you're in rough terrain, you're going fast. So what we need to do is just cut this ever so slightly deeper. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure that you clean that groove out the best that you can. Okay, next failure point, guys, is this bearing right here. What happens, there's a tiny little retainer inside of here, and this is pretty much pressed to the axle, okay? But the axle will go this direction, slide out. It loses the retainer on that bearing and it walks out, okay? So let's say if you don't need to replace this bearing that's on here, what you want to do is just put a small tack weld on here, okay? A couple of them. I did 4 of them. There's nothing wrong with those bearings. They're Japanese bearings. I'm not touching them, so you have to figure that out in a different video. This was more about the 6-to-1 gear change. Okay, there's seals inside of here. If you see any problems with the ones that you have, go ahead and replace them at this time. I will try to leave the part number in the description for that seal. So anyways, I'm going to drain this rear end. There's 2 bolts. That's for drain and that's for fill. Okay, so what kind of rear end do you have? This is a Type K. You know you have a Type K if these are 10mm bolts. If they're 12 or 13, it's a Type G. And this isn't procedure for that. I only deal with the Type K because this is the rear end while the engine was still counterclockwise. So our forward and reverse will be, even with the gear change, what it's supposed to be. So we're going to remove we're draining the oil now. I'm going to remove the transmission from it, and these are 10mm bolts. They are different sizes, so mark them or put them right back in after you take them off. These top 2 bolts are longer than the bottom bolt. And let me show you, there's one more. So we're going to take off this one, and this one. Don't take this off. You don't need to take these 3 right here off. That just holds the transmission together. Then the last bolt you're going to take off is a 12mm, and it's right here. Okay, so again, to disconnect the transmission, we're going to remove this bolt and those other 3 bolts on the side. Okay, we removed the transmission from the axle by removing that bolt, these 3 bolts right there. From there, you just tap it with a mallet and kind of work the transmission loose. If it is stuck, there's a video from Brad Porciano, I believe is his name. I'm not going to leave a link in the description, but there is a video how to remove it if it's seized onto there. We pulled it off. We were trying to get the secondary clutch off, and it's just fighting us. That's nothing to do with this video. That's the transmission. That's the most valuable piece on this club car. We'll deal with that later. In case you forget, the short side is the driver's side. The long side is the passenger side. Okay, both of the axles are off, and we're left with just the gearbox. And we are going to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 bolts that we're going to remove.
Is that one?
Okay, of those 10 bolts, they're all the same. You can take them all out at the same time. I like to put stuff in a bag, a Ziploc bag, so I'll just mark this gearbox and throw those bolts in there. Okay, these ain't easy to get apart. We're tapping it with a hammer all the way around.
We had to make our own
So
opening.
I'm gonna, unfortunately it's not breaking free or loose. I'm gonna have to get a screwdriver right in between these 2 housings. These are very soft blows, guys. Okay, let me flip it over and then restart it again. Okay, Go.
Why choose between advertising that builds your brand or advertising that drives immediate sales? Marketing architects all inclusive. Creative you're proud of and sales acquisition.
Number one screwdriver from Harbor Freight. I hate to do it that way, but that's the only way I found to get this case to split.
He's going to replace the place. And then you got St. Anderson who's going to replace the corner. Another way of getting to a 2-deep shell. And nobody threatens St. Anderson really in the flat, so he leaks underneath it and is able to reach the quarterback and make a play on the ball. And it's just a different way of getting to the same type of coverage and confusing the quarterback. Love's in trouble, gets rid of it in the air and to the ground, incomplete.
Right. So our case is apart. We'll pull this gasket off and clean it up. We're not going to reinstall the gasket back in it. There was, when we pulled the axle off, there was one of these shims in here. This shim is the same thickness as this gasket. So because we're not reinstalling that gasket, we're not going to reinstall this shim that went onto the axle. I'm going to use 3-bond when we get part of the reassembly process. Okay, so for now, anyways, we're going to pull, this is the input shaft, this comes out. Okay, in order to get these apart, they kind of have to come out together. You can get the input shaft off on its own. Okay, that'll come out on its own. These two have to come out together. So you need to pull them both out at the same time. Okay. Those are now our components. There's another seal in here. Hopefully I will leave a link in the description, or at least the part number for that seal. Not the end of the world if you don't change it, but as long as it's out. These bearings right here, these ride inside of oil. These are Japanese bearings that ride inside of oil. I see no reason whatsoever to change these bearings. They should never go bad. If they went bad, you got something else going on. But these bearings should never go bad. They're encased in gear oil. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is let me show you the kit and what we're changing. Okay, so what we're replacing, this is one of the two pieces. Okay, so we do have to get this bearing off of here. And we need to get this bearing and this gear off of here. I brought a bearing spreader home, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. And then on this piece, we are changing the ring gear on there. There's these little tabs that are bent over that keep it from releasing on there. We're going to loosen those up and remove this. Okay. I will get you the torque specs for these bolts. They're in the book from Brad Porciano. I don't know how you say it. But so we're going to remove this ring gear, and then I will show you how I get this disassembled. Brandon's over here working on releasing those tabs from the ring gear. And I went and got the bearing puller. Guys, this is from Harbor Freight. Again, forgot what the kit cost. So, in there, it's this piece. Okay, you want to put it on there, Kevin, I'll record it. So we're going under the very first bearing right now. And ideally, we'd be pulling this bearing from the bottom, not the top, but it's not the way it works out in this one, so we're going to pull it from the top and not the bottom. I wasn't sure if you used the bearing puller before. I was going to ask you if you knew how to set it up.
is going to come after you and get some of those numbers. And yes, he's become more of a rotation.
Bent on me pretty well.
Gets home. And they do, as you said, roll a lot of guys in and out up front. Spread those sacks all over the place, and they've got quite a few. 3 tonight, 43 on the year. Leading top 10 sack team in defense in the NFL is really in the
And I'm going to pause this for a second to get the socket for that, but you get the idea of how to set this up. Go ahead. You could use an impactor on that too, but he had the wrench sitting right there, so. Okay, and that's how you get the bearing out. Okay, now we're going to go to the other side and pull the other bearing. And I need to show you that because we just showed you how to use a bearing puller. So we're going to do the same thing over there for this bearing. Quick note, this is just about flush. The bearing's slightly higher, but it's just about flush right here. Okay, the ring gear, got all the bolts out of it. This is actually really simple. Can you swap that out for me, Kevin? The only thing you want to pay attention to is what direction these are going, so you don't put it in upside down.
Take inside the winning room. We'll hear from winning coaches, players, all those things. We'll see when this is done. Joe, Troy, back to you.
There's an alignment dowel right here in the middle. In that alignment hole, that was only for, I don't know what that's for. It's not needed. The old one doesn't have it. But for some reason they put it on the new one. So that's it, and then we're just going to reassemble these, and that's it for the ring gear. Okay, torque spec for this ring gear is 18 foot-pounds. I'm getting a lot of the information from this book. You can get it on Amazon. Very helpful. It has everything you need to know in there. He does show the gear change, but he's showing the 8-to-1 gear change, not the 6-to-1. It's completely different. So again, another reason why I'm making this video. Okay, so we're going to put this back together. I threw this. This is the gear that comes with 6-to-1 kit. I threw it in the snow and just heating this up because we don't have a press here. Alright, let's see if we can get them to... There is a keyway in there. Let's see if we can get them to mate.
Hurry! The holidays are here. Shop sales last minute gifts before they're gone. Limited quantities are available.
Okay, so we just tapped it down with a hammer, putting a socket on there.
Brought to you by Gold Peak. It's gold.
Okay, guys, we got a ways to go here. Bearing still has to go on. Again, a press would be ideal, but we don't have one available. So, a little bit more. We're just looking down here. You want no space on there, so we're going to keep going.
And the conversation in Countdown was about this.
One more for good measure.
Josh asked the question, when's the last time they had three?
And this was a 25 millimeter socket. Okay, so the failure point, once you get this on here, we can put the bearing back on the back here, but that keyway that you seen in there, that was the only thing holding these two gears together. Okay, so if you're doing I did a 45 horsepower engine, you need to weld this right here in between them. That way, hold on. Okay, so you have to weld right there. Okay, we're going to put a couple of tack welds in there at a later time. But if you don't, all the pressure is on that keyway right here, and it does not hold, and it will break. So weld these two together. 1 second. I'm going to get something I can point there. Okay, so what you're welding is this to this. Okay, you have to just do a couple of... this is all going to be one piece anyways, guys. So weld this to this. Okay, so we have this change. We're just going to put the bearings back on it, and our ring gear is swapped out now. Okay, so you have to clearance part of this. This is the lower cake. Okay, and what you have to clearance is this right here. So we need to grind this down or out. If you don't remove that on the H1 set, the intermediate gears are going to hit it. Okay, so I put the intermediate gears in. They're hitting. Okay. So if you don't do that, you're going to put this all together and find out that it won't move. And you won't know that until you put the intermediate gears all the way back in. So again, clearance that, just grind it out. Okay, so reassembling the gears in here. I'm not going to reassemble this now, guys. Tomorrow is Christmas. I want to get this video finished up. But you're going to put the intermediate gear and the ring gear in at the same time. Get those to seat. And then you'll put your input shaft in. Okay. To seal this case, after you've got it all cleaned up, you cannot use RTV sealer. It will not work. You have to use 3-bond. I would suggest 1184. Kind of hard to get, a little expensive. This stuff sets up real fast. We put a very thin layer on just one side of it, so make sure everything is assembled and you're ready to go before you put the other half on. You may even want to do a dry fit when you're putting it back together, but you've got about 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes to get this case back on. I couldn't find a torque spec for this. The other style transmission says 17 foot-pounds. If you try to torque down these bolts to 17 foot-pounds, you're going to strip it. So I would suggest just using a star pattern and tighten them by hand. If I find the torque specs for the case, I'll let you know, but just tighten them by hand in a star pattern. The tack welding I'd mentioned earlier in my video, that's all based on, those were failure points I found. Cart has a 45 horsepower engine in it with a different clutch setup, and those were the failure points, so I had to remove it. And I think if you're just working with a standard engine, I wouldn't worry about it, or even a 20 horsepower engine. But you start getting crazy with the engine. You got the rear end apart, that's what I seen failed, so I would just go ahead and make those tack welds now. Anyways, if you got any questions, drop them in the comments, and thanks for watching the video.